Hello, welcome to the well awaited March book club, where I do a monthly book club for whatever I have in my apartment I did not finish. But hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Miracle, population me. If you're returning, I do a monthly book club here in between my chasing rejection scene because I have too many books and I got to finish them all. And this month's book is coming late and it's definitely not an April Fool's joke, though it is the second when I'm filming this. Do not worry too much about that. And the book of the month is Daughter of Fortune by Isabel Allende. And I will say off the bat, it is a realistic fiction book, which I don't necessarily go for. I go for either a history book or a fictional book. So I say part of the reason why I did, here's an excuse. Part of the reason why it did take me a longer time to finish this book is because it was realistic and a lot of it was based in like real history while using fictional characters. So I did not find that super duper interesting. So it made me really hard to finish a book within the month while doing everything else I do in my life. So hello, this is the month's book club. I try to dress similar to the cover of the girl on the in the book because I thought I have this sweater, might as well do it. And currently it is like almost 1 o'clock in the morning on April 2nd, and I'm filming this video because I haven't yet. So here we are. But per usual, I go over the summary and I give my opinions and the ratings at the very end based on my own subjective opinion. Okay. So if you don't agree with it, obviously don't got to. And obviously, spoilers, because how else am I going to let you guys know what this book is about? Right? So I'm going to give you guys a synopsis of the book so that you guys know exactly what it is in case I do a horrendous job explaining my true thoughts. But this book is about orphan at birth. Eliza Summers is raised in the British colony of Valparaiso, Chile, by the well-intentioned Victorian spinster Miss Rose and her more rigid brother Jeremy. Just as she meets and falls in love with the wildly inappropriate Joaquin Andia, a lowly clerk who worked for Jeremy, go to discover in the hills of Northern California. By 1849, the Chileans of every stripe have fallen prey to feverish dreams of wealth. Joaquin takes off for San Francisco to seek his fortune, and Eliza, pregnant with his child, decides to follow him. And then that's essentially the book. And the next paragraph is so begins Isabel Allende's enchanting new novel, Daughter of Fortune, her most ambitious work of fiction yet, as we follow her spirited heroine on a perilous journey north of the hold of a ship of a rough and tumble world of San Francisco and Northern California. We enter the world where newly arrived inhabitants are driven mad by gold fever, society of single men and prostitutes, among whom Eliza moves with the help of her good friend and savior, the Chinese doctor Tao Chen-yi. California opens the door to a new life of freedom and independence for the young Chilean. Her search for the elusive Joaquin gradually turns into another kind of journey that transforms her over time, and what begins as a search for love ends up as a conquest of personal freedom. By the time she finally hears news of him, Eliza must decide who her true love really is. Yeah, that last sentence didn't happen. But anyway, summary of the book you basically just heard, but it's about this girl who was an orphan and was given to this woman named Miss Rose, who is Victorian. She grew up in UK, Britain, and then moved over to Chile later on in life. Did not have a husband, which in the early 1800s was not heard of. And I don't know how old she is. She's kind of elusive for her age, but she's always been known to look really young. But she never really had a lover. She had someone when she was 16 who was in his 40s at the very least. And that was not a relationship that they were supposed to have, not because of the age gap, unfortunately, because he was like a traveling singer and she was more of higher royalty, if that makes sense. So her and her brother moved over to Chile to start over and also just have more prosperity in life. And they met this baby literally in like I don't know, a basket or whatever, as what they told her when she grew up. And they taught her the ways of Chile, but also the way of like the British high society. So she was always taught to always stand up straight, move around, cook, be almost invisible, act like a woman, but always be your own personal self. And Miss Rose was always that motherly figure while also being her teacher in life because of the love that she was never able to have for her main relationship. She didn't want that for Eliza. So later on in life, she did try to like help Eliza gain more suitors in her endeavor, but Eliza never cared about suitors. She actually never cared about boys for a long time. And the guys that Miss Rose actually tried to get for her end up liking Miss Rose more. Which is funny because she was always known to be very beautiful, so I can see why they would go for her. But Miss Rose was just not. She didn't want anyone, so she was just like, "Oh, my endeavors have failed me." So that was really funny. But later on, this came this really poor guy named Joe. I'm saying it wrong, but it's like Joe Queen Andidia. Here's the spelling. I'm sorry, I'm butchering it like terribly. And he's a really poor man who basically works with Miss Rose's brother as a clerk. They said a clerk, but he did a different job throughout the book. And he's just been poor his entire life. His mom has always been poor. His dad is unknown, so he's been working to like take care of them. But goes over there sometimes to like help him with the house or help deliver packages that he's doing with one of the brothers who is a sailor. And Eliza falls in love with him. But at some point, it looks like it's a one sided love because only she's having a crush on him. Mind you, she's like 16, he's like in his 20s. No such thing as a problematic age gap in this book, apparently. But later on, they do kind of fall in love or they have the idea of love and they meet up in her place. Like, I think it was once a week and they just do the job. They do a job like once a week, and eventually she gets pregnant, right? And it's becoming a bad sign because like you have a baby at a wedlock, but also to this poor person, and you're like of higher society. It's not a good look for her. And around this time, Joe Queen basically goes to California because he's poor as shit, and California has the gold rush, which we all know, or if you haven't gone to school, it is like the popular thing where gold was found like in every mine, in the grounds, in your water, in the clouds, and you go in there and gold was like the currency, which is crazy considering that it wasn't the currency for anywhere else but California. But anyway, he goes there looking for a better life. He steals from like his clients so that he can get enough money to go there. And he doesn't tell anyone where he was going or really why. And when Eliza finds out, she gets the help of the Chinese doctor to help her be a stowaway on a ship where she travels for like several months with like several other people who did not know she was there because it'd be really bad. But unfortunately, on the way there, she does suffer a miscarriage for like multitude of reasons. She was really sick on the ship, and also she was like stuck in like the basement of the ship. So all of that plus like infestation, there was rats, there was a cat that died there. It was like a whole mess. So like all those bad qualities and the fact that she wasn't being fed correctly as well because she was a stowaway and the Chinese doctor was doing his best, but like not everyone was getting a full meal. She was like almost dead herself by the time she had a miscarriage. So eventually she gets to California with Tao Yin, and they go on their way to like look for him because for a good second they don't know where he is, and it's been months since he's gone there, and he went straight to San Francisco. And we just follow the path of her and the doctor because they kind of stay together the entire time. But because she is not a popular woman, but if people find out her real name, it can very much go back to the family back in Chile because they're like well known. So she dresses up like a boy, and her name becomes Elias. And here's her name again. I'm gonna butcher everything, but her name becomes Elias, and because she looks very non-descriptive as a girl, she blends in very well as a boy. At some point, people think she's a Chinese boy. I guess she's like she says she's pale, but then it's like they're in the brutal sun of San Francisco, so I think she tans. But they just call her a Chinese boy because she cuts her hair later on, just wears like a hat and wear men's clothing all the time. And the Chinese doctor goes around and gets a lot of patients so they can get more money and they can also take care of themselves. He wants to stay stagnant where he is because he just wants to get money and like help as many people as he wants. And she wants to keep traveling around California, big ass state by the way, to look for her boo thing who doesn't even care that she's there, doesn't even know really. Long story short, they like go she disappears from the Chinese doctor and then she goes on her own way, goes with a traveling circus at one point. She plays the piano at one point, so she makes money that way. She was traveling with a group of Mexicans at one point, but they started to stay stagnant in one place, so she moved on to another group of people who was women were like a luxury. So if you were a woman, you're most likely a prostitute and you're definitely going to a brothel. You made a lot of money, but it was still a brothel. So yeah, there was some downsides, as you can tell. But there wasn't a lot of women who would just like out and about as a woman and not a prostitute. So she meets this woman named Joe Butcher Smasher or something, which is not her real name, but she dressed like a man as well. And she takes her in and she kind of rescues a few prostitutes to be like her daughters and I'll take care of her. And she comes in with this like they say he's Russian, this Russian man who is like strong enough to like carry a horse, so he's like their security, and they basically make money together. While whether that is playing the piano, cooking, cleaning, eventually they raise up a hospital because they do know some medicine, and Eliza, who is named Elias at this point, does know medication because Tao Chanyin has been teaching her. And that happens for like a while until the money dries up and she needs to keep moving because they become stagnant. But this happens years later. So the story starts off at the 1843 and it ends a decade later at 1853. So around the 1850s, she is finding Tao Chenyi again. He actually finds her with the traveling, not circus, at this point they're a hospital, or as much of a hospital you can be during the Wild West of California. But he finds her there and he starts questioning and they like hug and everything because it's been like several years since they've seen each other again. And at this point, he's like more of a well renowned, not well renowned, there's a lot of racism. So he's not as renowned, but he's well accepted as a doctor during that time while also being Chinese, but assimilating into a lot of the American culture because a lot of different cultures come into California. It's not just the Americans, Native Americans are there, the Chileans, the Mexicans, the Irish, different parts of Europe, different parts of Asia, but racism is rampant, and the Americans stand on top of all of them. So white Americans, as we know. And once they meet again, he's a more established doctor. More people trust him. He knows more English. He dressed like an American, which is very different than his counterparts of China and definitely Chinatown. So he becomes like he meets up with her again, and they start to decide like, is it worth her actually going to find Joe Queen, her love boo, right? Because at this point, they have a newspaper, and weekly, this newspaper comes out with this really horrendous crime gang that is consistent of this guy named Joe Queen or Josephine, one or the other. Is a male name though, and this person who has a very similar name to Joe Queen is like a rootless killer. He has like slaughtered several people, whether innocent, whether not. People say he saves the women but kills the men. And it's just a very much messy situation that the Americans want him killed, and everyone else is like, he's all right. Like, he's not killing me, so I'm okay with it, right? But the more the conversation happens of like what he's doing and how much crime he's having, the more Tao Chenyi is telling Eliza, like, hey, maybe you should give up on your man because one, he's not here for gold. And two, if he's such a bad criminal, you will never really see him because there's no guarantee he'll even know you or memorize you or want you. But she still holds out hope because she doesn't think it's actually him. Because some of the stories are a little bit fabricated because the author of the newspaper is a liar. But some of it might be true. The main issue is no one knows what he looks like because he's elusive, but he is killing. And eventually, they do actually find. Eventually, the sheriff of the town does rattle together a few people to go on a 3-month mission to find this gang leader, which they surprisingly found after like 3 months. 3 months, right? They found him after 3 months with like 7 other Mexicans, and they killed him, and they like parade their body. Yeah, it's kind of graphic. Sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. Trigger warning. Graphic. They parade his body after they cut his head off, and they paraded him in like a museum. And at this point, Eliza is giving the chance of doing one more year to look for her boo before she just decides to stay in California. Because at no point does she want to go back home and be with Miss Rose and her brother because they treated her very well. But I mean, you ran away from your family that took you in when you were an orphan, so it becomes more of like survival, really. Like you go back, you're probably gonna be met with scorn and not the love you once came with. And if you stay in California, where you had more of a story that you ever had in your entire life of living, some bad, some good, you probably would stay in California where everyone was like it was a place to be, really, in 1850s. And essentially, she goes with a Chinese doctor at the very end of the book in 1853 when they paraded him enough to put him in a museum. And they go inside the museum and she sees his head just to confirm if it was him or not. And it's left ambiguous. I'm not gonna lie. Literally the last few sentences was her opening her eyes, look at the head, and then they leave right after. And then Tao Chen Yi is asking her, "Oh, well, was it him?" And then she's like, "Oh, I am free now." Because the love that she had for him was keeping her trapped in believing that she currently have to keep moving to find him. When in reality, she just needed to like find the freedom that she had to be who she wasn't before. But I took it as personally, I took it as he was dead because like I don't know, the book kind of like pushed you to think that way, so I took it that way. And this is the picture of her in like 1853. I'll put a better one on screen. This is when she took a picture of herself with a photographer in California. She's not looking like a male in this one. She dressed in her outfits again years after she left for California. And she is sending this picture to Miss Rose years after she ran away because Miss Rose at this point thought she was dead, got the press, had heard some rumors that she was alive, and was going to look for her near the end of the book. And she was going to send this exact picture to Miss Rose. That way she knows that she's alive, not so that she can come and find her, but that she wouldn't be terrified and also, depressed as she still is, but probably less now. But that's the entire story. She kind of leaves her comfy, stiffened home to go on a journey for a lover that she thought would be waiting for her. In reality, she finds herself not only meeting people that didn't follow the same rules that she had followed, but also understanding more about what freedom can look like in the palm of your hands. Because if you're in California now, you probably just know that everyone comes to you because they're looking for an opportunity to do better or to change their lives. But if you're not in California, then the 1850s and the gold rush really became the situation that like you can be poor and be rich in California. You can be rich and go there and be poor. It was like you can be like a madman and be like the smartest man when you get there. It's like you can change your entire identity, not just with gold, but just like the prospects of like making your own business, being who you are, changing your story. So everyone who went there, whether good or bad, what a good, there were slaves in this story, okay? So when I say good or bad, guys, good or bad, you had a different story than what you came in with, right? But I think that is the summary. That is the entire summary. I may have skipped some things, and it's honest because like a lot of characters, a lot of moving pieces, but not a lot of them were that important in the grand scheme of things, but it's a good book. You should read it. I like it personally. Here's my opinion. The title of the book is called Daughter of Fortune, and I do believe it is called that because she is an orphan, as I said 3 times, but she grew up in a family that was, I wouldn't say wealthy, but very well off, coming from a Victorian lifestyle to a Chile homeland where she was raised by a nanny who became like her second mother, and also Miss Rose and her brother and her other brother who was a captain of a ship. She came very wealthy with like money and dowry and like a parent and Miss Rose who cared about her, right? And then when she moved to California, she did not get rich like everyone else. She did not get gold. She did not strike it big. But even when she had the love to push her forward in like the worst of times in California, and there was some worst times, she never lost sight of who she was trying to be and who she saw herself growing into. Because you went from being like, oh, be this pretty little girl who can never look down and do everything that we say you do, and then you went from that to being like male centered because you dress like one. You had the freedom that many males had during that time, while also knowing different cultures and knowing your skills and how you can sell them. Like she was a pianist for a good second, made money that way. She knows how to cook, so she made like meals for people who only knew like dry bread. She knew how to be a mini doctor because of the Chinese doctor, so she was able to do like hospital stuff for money. So she used all her skills to like see other people and gain more stories, and also become like very a big wealth of knowledge, if we can say that. So I do think they are right about the Daughter of Fortune storyline. So that's my first thought. Second thought, I do think her boo thing is dead. I know, shocker, but like, I mean, the only person that was consistently talked about as being her potential like boo in California for Joe Queen was that guy. So it's like I don't know who else it could have been because they only gave stories for him to be it And yeah, he's a criminal. He was literally like killed because he was killing a lot of people, you know. But at the end of the day, it was like, well, you got no one else. And I do believe she only knew she can become free if she let go of the love that she had for this person from like literally 3 years ago, right? Like she left after he did, and he never came to look for her because he didn't know, right? But she purposely was putting her name out there, the male name, not the female name, so that he can like go and find her, and he never did. And yet people always heard of her after a while. So it was like if he wanted to look for her, he probably could have. So I do think he was dead. And she did kind of have a crush on Tao Chanyin because they've been together for so long that they got used to each other. And he's Chinese, like he's from China, she's from Chile. So they did not know anything about each other's culture. For a long time, they didn't speak each other's language, but they knew enough English to like communicate and got better with that. And they became like friends. When in China, you're not really friends with women, and then in Chile, you're not really friends with anyone who's not like white or really white. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like I would say Hispanic, but they don't even like their own. So I would just say white. But overall, it was a good story. I like I said before in the beginning, it took me a while to finish this book because it was realistic fiction. A lot of storylines did talk about what really happened during the gold rush. Which not gonna say I knew everything, but it was just like I want to know more about the story. Which I kind of felt like not that it lagged in any part, but I guess they put too much on the story of like how people were going over there and doing the gold rush, and how the miners who went from thinking they were so rich with nuggets of gold went from being super poor they had to sell their land or being forced into slavery because laws were being taken over once California was bought by the United States. And it was just like, oh my gosh, is this a history lesson or is this a novel? Like I like the book, don't get me wrong, and I think it's a good direction. But in my head, I was like, I really want to know more about the story of the characters in the book, not the overall setting of what was happening, because I don't really think the selling of California to America really did anything to the overall story. Like she still did everything she was going to do, even if it was like still being fought in the war or whatever. But I guess it was important if you just didn't know, which is fine. But I do think it could have been saved more for the characters. Like I would like to know if Miss Rose ever does look for her. I would like to know if Joe Queen really is dead. I know it's like open ended, but like it didn't have to be, in my opinion. I would like to know the future of like Eliza with Tao Chin because they seem to have like a mini crush that they don't really talk about. And I'm like, well, did it go anywhere? Did y'all just stay friends? Where are you guys now? Are you still in California? Like, I don't know. And I guess that's the point, right? You're not gonna know a person's entire storyline from start to finish. But there's some books that just be good where they're at and they end like in the middle of like 10 years. But anyway, overall, very good book. I will give it a 7. I would give it a 6.5, but I think it's too low. And honestly, it's just my fault. It took too long to read a book. But I don't know. A 7 is good. I think a 7 is really good. So if you want to read Daughter of Fortune, get it at your local bookstore. I got it for free, per usual. Love it. Hope you guys like the outfit. I try to make it similar to hers because she wears like a black. I'm not sure if it's black. This is like a black and whatever color picture this is, but it's a dress, like a pentecoat. She has jewelry on. She's supposed to be wearing pearls in this picture, but it's white on top of white, so you're not gonna see it. But I don't got pearls, so I hope you like the sweater. Got little ruffles on it, so I thought it'd be cute to almost match it. So thank you guys for watching. So sorry this episode is coming out super late. I will be back with a new episode for Chasing Rejection. Hopefully sooner rather than later. I've been kind of slacking because I've been working on other things in my personal life. So we will get back on that real quick in a future video. But I'll see you guys next time. Remember to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss an update from me. Okay, bye.